Joining me now from Newsmax, New York, the former Lieutenant Governor of the Empire State, Betsy McCaughey. Betsy, it's so good to have you with us. History notes that you and George Pataki ended Mario Cuomo's governorship. He was running for a fourth term. What are your memories of that campaign and your memories of Governor Cuomo?
Well, first of all, my memories of Governor Cuomo, despite the fact that he and I disagreed on many policy matters, he was a self-described, I should say self-proclaimed and very proud liberal. He was a great orator, he was a statesman, and most importantly, he was a very kind human being. I remember just a few weeks after George Pataki and I defeated Mario Cuomo and his running mate, after George Pataki and I defeated Mario Cuomo and his running mate, and he spotted me, walked over, held out his hand and said, "I just want you to know I think you're doing a really good job." What a gracious thing to do. Just want you to know I think you're doing a really good job. What a gracious thing to do. And I have another story if you have time about
You bet.
him.
Go right ahead, Betsy.
And I have another story if you have time about him.
You bet. Go right ahead, Betsy.
And worked his way up, went to St. John's Law School, and here he was in his third year at law school with a newlywed and a baby. And he was working as hard as he could, knowing he had to support a family. He got all A's, did very well on the bar exam, and was expecting offers to pour in from all the fancy New York law firms. But nothing happened. And finally, the dean of the law school said to him that maybe he ought to change his name to something else so he didn't sound like an Italian immigrant. And you know, that clearly had a lasting impression on Mario Cuomo. He was always sympathetic to the underdog, always wanting to give everybody a fair shot.
Mindful of that, were Mario Cuomo governor right now, how do you believe he would be handling the dispute that has arisen in New York City between the NYPD and Mayor Bill de Blasio?
Well, certainly he would be very concerned about the work stoppage and also about the unfair charges made against these police officers. It wasn't such a big issue during his terms, his 3 terms in office, although crime did increase significantly under Mario Cuomo. But I can say that he had the statesman-like qualities that I hope would have enabled him to bring the two sides together.
As both a governor and as a candidate, I believe Governor Cuomo was quoted as saying, "Campaigning is the poetry, governing is the prose." But was it his legal background that gave him both the gravitas and the passion on the stump to speak so powerfully as he did at the San Francisco Democratic Convention of 1984?
I'm not sure it was his legal background. I would attribute it more to his immigrant upbringing, some of the hard knocks he experienced early in his life, and his big heart. He really was an exceptional human being. As I said, I disagreed with his tax policies and many of his other policies, but I liked him so much, and that's what most New Yorkers will remember.
We've got about 3.5 minutes, Betsy, and I'm interested because so many Democrats after that San Francisco speech really wanted to see Governor Cuomo run for the presidency. In talking
well, that's right, he was considered the 2-to-1 favorite.
And of course, most famously in 1992, the report was there was the plane on the tarmac ready to take him to New Hampshire, but there was a dispute in Albany with the legislature and the budget, and he decided not to run for president. So the tabloids being what they are and disappointment and detractors being who they are, they called him Hamlet on the Hudson. Why do you think he decided not to run for president?
Well, of course, I can't read his mind, but I can say, or I can suggest, that he was a humble man despite his great oratory. Maybe he worried that he really wasn't, he couldn't envision a man from his background becoming president. If so, that's unfortunate. He couldn't envision a man from his background becoming president. If so, that's unfortunate. Probably would have been a very successful presidential candidate. Of all the governors of New York State, I can look back and say he was really in it to get the job done. He wasn't in it for the money. He wasn't in it for the fame. He was a very dedicated public servant.
2 minutes remain. Let's switch gears. Betsy, you are one who read all the thousands of pages of the Obamacare bill. Would that everyone on Capitol Hill had read it. The employer mandate quietly took effect this week. In the minute and 45 that remains, what impact is this going to have on companies and their employees?
Well, I'm very worried, particularly about the companies with fewer than 50 employees. And you ask, why is that? Well, the employer mandate requires employers with 50 or more full-time workers to provide health coverage, and not just any plan. It's got to be the one-size-fits-all Obamacare design plan. And that's going to raise costs for many employers. Some will drop coverage. The Congressional Budget Office actually estimates that fewer people will have on-the-job coverage after this goes into effect than right now. But it's really going to hit hardest the people who work for the small businesses, under 50 employees, because there is no mandate on them, and yet those employers have only two choices: no insurance or the Obamacare package, which costs far more than what they're currently offering. So you're going to see about 20 million people lose their current plans. They're going to get cancellation notices for those plans they get through their jobs or their spouse's job. They're going to get those cancellation notices in the next few months, and that's really pathetic.
Not exactly the kind of New Year's gift that people want to see. Betsy McCaughey, we thank you for your time today. We understand that later here on Newsmax TV, you'll be playing a major role helping to host the Steve Malzberg Show. So we thank you for that in advance and for your time here this morning on America's Forum.
Thank you.
Take good care. Former New York Lieutenant Governor Betsy McCaughey. Hey, one note on Newsmax TV. If you're watching on Dish Network, usually you see us on 223. We're still there 24/7, but we're also now on channel 206 on Dish. Here's a Newsmax Now update.